There are a bunch of reasons to love a video game. The gameplay, the art and graphics, the community, the music, player freedom, and heck, some games are just loved because they are a great platform for modding. But above all of these, for a lot of people, is story. See, a good story can make an otherwise bad game alright, and a good game great. Now, narrative isn't unique to video games, but its ability to be interacted with by the player is. Video game stories can be sprawling affairs, offering a lot of time to get familiar with your characters, as a game story can typically take from 6 to 100 hours depending on the type and scope of the game. Additionally, some titles you get to make choices, not only impacting the story, but also giving the player the opportunity to return and experience the narrative differently. So, what are the criteria for this video? Well, this is a pretty subjective topic, so it's basically just my opinion on what games I think have a good story. If you don't agree with these games, well, you're right. If you do agree with these games, you're also right. At the end of the day, the true quality of a story is up to the feelings of the viewer or the player. Also, I will only vaguely mention the plots of these games and instead focus on what makes it a quality story. You'll see what I mean soon enough. I just want to avoid spoilers. One last thing before I jump in. This video is recommended on my channel's community page. If you want to help determine the future of this channel like ArkhamWaffle did, who picked this video, check out the channel. Now, as a huge Halo fanboy and someone who exclusively played Xbox for 8 years, it should come as no surprise that the first game we're looking at here today is God of War 2018. Now, that's not just a joke about being an Xbox player. I never touched a God of War game until a couple years back when I gave the 2018 soft reboot, simply titled God of War, a chance. Let me tell you, what a compelling narrative. The game doesn't hold your hand or expedition dump, letting the narrative unfold at proper pace. It also doesn't require the player to be familiar with any source material, such as the previous games or Greek/Norse mythology. It does lean heavily on its mythological inspirations, but anything that needs understanding is explained by the story itself. The story is emotional, awe-inspiring, and action-packed, as you jaunt across the 9 realms of Norse mythology, playing as a Greek god and his son. The journey is personal and features excellent dialogue, and a true sense of player and character growth. None of this is to mention the excellent visuals and compelling gameplay. I highly recommend God of War 2018 if you're looking for a good 20 to 30 hour action adventure with a compelling story. The next game we'll be covering is Cyberpunk 2077, which is interesting in the fact that while I do believe it has an excellent story, it's a story up until recently that hasn't been accessible to the vast majority of players. That's because the game was released in a pretty unplayable fashion unless you had a current-gen console or an enthusiast-level PC, both of which were made nearly impossible to acquire as a result of the ongoing 2020 scalping crisis. This meant a lot of players who rightfully either didn't buy the game or who returned it didn't get to experience the excellently crafted narrative. Well, the year is 2023, the game just got a major overhaul, and current-gen consoles and enthusiast PC hardware are attainable, so let's get into the story of it. Let's start with probably the game's biggest narrative strength, the multi-dimensional character writing. Basically, none of the characters of importance are one-dimensional. Every character has a depth to them beyond just a singular trait or quality. For example, Johnny Silverhand seems to initially be an asshole rocker boy who hates corporations and wants to stick it to the man. But as the story progresses, you discover that he has other motivations for his conflict with corporations, and it isn't just as simple as stick it to the man. Another strength of the story is V. V is fairly unique amongst RPG protagonists as they're half written and established character and half player created. Basically, you have a somewhat well-defined and inflexible past based on your starting options, but then everything in V's present and future is now up to you. Once you do get into it though, man, you have a lot of options on how you want to tackle moving through the story. Certain dialogue options and or story options are determined by your pre-written background, previous story choices, or what exact level ups you've chosen. And that variety is well worth exploring as the character writing and voice acting is simply excellent, running the gamut from emotional to comedic to, yeah, corny, but also cool. Finally, for the purpose of what we're looking at here today, the game has several decades of world building from the original tabletop game, and a masterly crafted and authentic feeling open world. Ultimately, if you were driven away by the game's shaky launch, now's the time to revisit. The last game I'll be taking a look at today is a bit of an older title that doesn't seem to be as prevalent as it once was. That game is Portal 2. Now, you don't need to have played the first one, as it was pretty light on story. The second game gets you up to speed pretty quick, and although the story can be pretty easy to tune out or ignore, you are doing yourself a disservice if you do that. The characters in the game are so damn well written. From Wheatley to Cave Johnson and to Gladys, the writing is witty, entertaining, humorous, and at times emotionally impactful. The voice actors do an excellent job at portraying the phenomenal writing, leaving you to forget that they aren't real at times. Additionally, this game excels at a type of storytelling that I haven't touched on yet, but is very useful, and that's environmental storytelling. In this game, the environments exude just as much character as your companions or foes do. The labs are run down and poorly maintained, giving this underlying sense that things at large aren't alright. Or how when you make your way deeper into Aperture Labs, the equipment and test gear seemingly looks less advanced, giving into the idea that you actually are exploring older portions of it. I could really gush for hours about it, but you should really just play it for yourself. It's an older game, so it will run on your PC no problem, and it seems to me Valve really undervalues it, as its normal price is $9.99, and a lot cheaper when it's on sale. So if you've got the $10 or see it on sale, and a dozen or so hours to spare, you've got to experience it. So I know this video is kind of a brief one, but what do you guys think of the games I chose to cover? I think it was a pretty good variety, but it's only a fraction of the great story games out there. I'd love to see what games you think have great stories, and who knows, maybe I'll revisit this topic. Thanks again to ArkhamWaffle for suggesting the idea, and thanks to all of you for watching. Goodbye.
More or less. I don't have the actuarial tables in front of me. But the important thing is you're back, with me. And now I'm on to all your little tricks. So there's nothing to stop us from testing for the rest of your life.